Perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much, Corinne and Nimity, for inviting me today to share a wonderful trip that my family and I had in Sri Lanka in January this year. So I would first like to acknowledge that I am presenting today on the lands of the Wajak Noongar people. And I'd like to pay my respects to the amazing art and artisanship of First Nations people here in Australia, and to pay my respects to elders past and present. This is a picture that I popped in here of an event we did last year as part of the Fairtrade Changemaker Tour. And here they're producing some weaving circles that are part of a huge project in WA called Reclaim the Void. And all of these pieces of, so they're all made out of rags, and each circle, I think they've made something like 30,000 of them, or maybe more, and they're all going to be connected into a huge artwork that'll be put on country in WA to showcase the voids in our on country that have come back through mining. So yeah, it's an amazing project, and yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that today as well. So just to give you a quick brief overview of what we'll talk about tonight. So this is pretty much a travel blog with a fair trade flavour. So I've used just lots and lots of pictures, which I'll talk to. But specifically, I went to visit two different fair trade groups. So one is called Selyn, and they mainly manufacture fabric children's toys. And we spent 2 days with them. We then went to visit the Sri Lankan tea land. So I'll talk a bit about the tea industry there. And then I visited BioFoods, which is a huge Fairtrade certified organic biodynamic producer of tea, spices and coconuts. So I'll talk a bit about them. So that's kind of covering both the systems of Fairtrade, which is quite interesting. And then just a couple of pictures of some flora, fauna and fun, which yeah, Sri Lanka is really vibrant and full of. I just preface this by saying I'm not an expert on Sri Lanka. I was a tourist, and I was just really lucky to visit these fair trade groups while I was there. So yeah, I'm really going to be talking about our experiences and what I learned at the fair trade groups today. So just by way of introduction, and I think most of you guys know me quite well, but so I'm just going to move the picture. So this is actually a picture of me or circa maybe 2009 on the back of a motorbike. I was on the back of that motorbike for a couple of hours going to a rural village in Cambodia, picking up some handicrafts. So I was actually based in Cambodia for 3 years and founded a social enterprise there called Khmer Creations. And during that time, we founded a company actually here in Australia as well. So we imported handcrafted products from Cambodia, which you can see there. So that kind of started my journey in fair trade. And from there, I moved to Australia and I actually met Bob. Bob was one of the first people that I met. I walked into his fair trade shop and said, "Oh, I've got this jewelry from Cambodia." And he said, "Yep, I'll buy 10 of each." I never forget that because he was one of the first shops that backed what we were doing, so I'm eternally grateful for that. But then I was able to join the movement in WA, so the WA Fair Trade Collective, of which Bob was the chair at the time, and was involved in that for many years, and then worked for Oxfam for 8 years. So I've got lots of experience in fair trade at very different levels, and obviously the thing that I love the most about fair trade is visiting producers. And I think one of the beauties of being part of this global movement is that you feel like you can travel with purpose. So you feel that you can go to a country and contact some of the fair trade groups there, and they welcome you, and you know they're so proud of what they do, and will graciously show you their projects. And that's exactly what happened to us in Sri Lanka. As I mentioned, I did work for Oxfam for 8 years, and Sri Lankan products were a really core part of our product range there. So both BioFoods and Selyn, who I'll talk about tonight, we stocked massive amounts of their products, and particularly BioFoods. So all of the tea that we used to sell in Coles and Woolies, So vast quantities of teas were all from BioFoods, so the black teas, green teas, Earl Greys, and we also sold some of their spices and coconut products as well. So and there was lots of other fair trade groups as well from Sri Lanka that we traded there. So I knew so much about the products, and always wanted to go to Sri Lanka. So this was an amazing opportunity. In 2015, I had the honor of going to the WFTO conference in Milan, and met Bob there. Bob was there as well. And on the right there is Julia Sumner. So she was the general manager of Oxfam at the time. And on the left is Sandra, who's the founder of Selyn. And in the middle next to me is Selena, who Selyn is named after. So Selena is Sandra's daughter. And so this was the first time I met them, and we really clicked actually, even in Milan. And it was, they were so grateful for how many products that we were selling of theirs in Oxfam, Australia. So yeah, it was great to be able to then meet them in person in Sri Lanka. So just really quickly then, I've just done a really rough drawing of our journey. So we started up in Colombo, just on the bottom left there. And our first stop was Kurunagala. So just if you go northeast, don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you see my cursor? Not sure. That's all right. So we went to Kurunagala, so that's where Selyn is based. It's about an hour and a half out of Sri Lanka. So much to my children's dismay, the first stop on our 3.5 week trip was a fair trade producer group. Yay! um, and then we headed on up north to Sigiriya, which is the amazing rock, very famous rock. And then we went to Polonnaruwa, which is the ancient, amazing ancient temples. And from there, we went down to Ella, and then we went to the tea lands. So I'll talk a bit about the tea lands today. And then we headed to the coast, and then that was all proper tourism, surfing, and all that kind of stuff down on the coast. And then on the way back, that's when we visited BioFoods just outside of Colombo, and their coconut factory as well. So that was kind of quite a standard route through Sri Lanka. So if any of you are planning to travel there or have traveled there, I think that's quite a standard route to go one way or the other. I would love to explore the East Coast in the future as well, but it was monsoon season when we were there, so it wasn't appropriate time to go. So as I said, our first stop was Kurunagala. It's definitely not a tourist destination. It's much more of a local town. It's about an hour and a half out of Colombo. And that's where Selyn is based. In fact, Sandra, who I showed you earlier, Selena's mum. So that's me and Selena looking 10 years older. So Sandra and Selena's mum, she also I found out, an international school. So they've got, because she couldn't find a good school for Selena when she was young. So they actually founded an international school. So they've got that going on as well. So yeah, amazing scale upon which they work. So they work with around 600 to 700 producers. And in their factory, they've got all the administration part as well. So there's around 40 staff members just that work in admin there as well. So it's a huge operation. And they specifically specialize, as I mentioned, in textile toys, which I'll show you in a minute. Their main market is Europe. They used to have around 5 fair trade shops in Sri Lanka, dotted around the country. But the local market is really suffering. As you probably know, Sri Lanka's had some significant economic issues, and actually this year they brought in VAT or GST, and it was like 18% or something. So that also has compounded their local market. It doesn't impact the export market, but it impacts their local market. And obviously, being a big organization, they're fully registered and everything. So they're going to have to add on 20% onto each product. And already it's a luxury product in Sri Lanka, because a lot of their textiles that you can see behind us are actually hand woven as well. If anyone wants to jump in with questions, I'm happy to take them as we go, by the way, or just, store them up as you go along. So the Fairtrade factory was amazing. It was quite a big building, and it was on multiple levels. And all of their products are made in a production line of sorts, not the kind that you can imagine in a kind of mainstream factory. But each element is made so toys are quite complex. So you can imagine if you look at the doll in this picture, you know, you've got the embroidery eyes and you've got the ears and you've got the hair. And so each different element is made. They are quite high tech. So the embroidery is done by machine. The cutting is done by laser cutting. So the fabric patterns are all cut by laser. So yeah, so they've got quite a few different ways of really kind of maximizing the production. And so this is kind of one floor of the factory. So all the women are working in doing different parts of the product. And then at the end, you can see the lady doing quality control and kind of overseeing those elements. So they all come to her at the end. They have 10,000 designs. It was amazing. I went to see their pattern making room, and they've got all the cardboard patterns, and they've got 10,000 designs. So it's absolutely, they don't produce 10,000 products at any one time, but they have the capacity. Over the years, they've developed 10,000 different products. So it's amazing. You can see my daughter there doing some quality control on the dolly toys. So the dolls are fantastic. They're all dressed up. So the great thing about Selyn products is that they've been developed by early childhood specialists. So they're all interactive. You can, you know, they've all got different educational aspects to them as well. So the ladies on the right are finishing off some soft books, and they're all kind of themed as well. So there'll be like an environmental theme or an oceans theme or a, you know, so they'll be, yeah, they're all really educational. So that was day one. So we spent like a whole day there. And then day two, we went to the dye plant. So Selyn actually dye the yarn and weave the fabric. So the whole product, they do the entire production. And this was really amazing. We actually went into a tiny little village to the dye plant, and we couldn't find the way because Vasala, who was showing us around, the main road was closed, and so we were like driving around and driving around, which was awesome for us because we got to see these amazing like tiny little villages. And at one point my husband said, stop the car, stop the car. And we stopped the car, and he jumped out. He said, I've seen a crocodile. And Vasily said, there's no crocodiles here in this part of Sri Lanka. He said, no, I've seen a crocodile. God knows how he saw it. But we walked back a bit to this bridge, and there was a monitor lizard, like it was 2.5 meters big. It was amazing. So yeah, that was pretty cool while we were trying to find the dye plant. Anyway, eventually we got to the dye plant, and so they actually use cotton from India. So the raw cotton is actually, sorry, the cotton yarn is imported from India. It's 100% organic. They've just moved to 100% organic cotton this year. And they've got a whole room that's locked up with all the dyes in, and the dyes are from Germany. So they're non-toxic azeo-free dyes. So because Sri Lanka export to the European Union, the regulations there are so much more strict than in Australia, which is fantastic because it means that any products that are exported to the EU, we also have the same standards here. So around the toxicity of the dyes, products are really well tested as well. So that obviously adds on a big cost for them to use the German dyes, but it means that obviously for kids' toys it's great. And I think the real iconic thing of Sri Lanka is these vibrant colors. So you just see this incredible textiles everywhere and these bright, vibrant colors. Yeah, which is just amazing. So this guy's that's post dyeing. Again, it's quite it's quite high tech, but it is in a rural village with no electricity, so which is interesting. So they power the machines using a wood furnace. So these I think they do have electricity on a generator, but so this is a big machine where they're actually bleaching the cotton or dyeing it white. I think. Sorry, not that clear. My husband was like the engineer who was like getting all the details on how they do it all. But then they use these huge machines that are like massive, ginormous washing machines that they dye the colors in. So there you can see all the wood that's chopped up, ready to feed the furnace. So once the yarn, it's very humid in Sri Lanka, so they actually have a ginormous drying room, like a heated room. And so that furnace is powering that drying room where all the yarn's dried and set. And the amazing thing that we loved seeing was the water treatment plant. So obviously you can imagine the dyes, the water it's quite a water intensive process, and the water is full of dye. So they actually have this amazing system where the dye water goes in, and it comes out on the right. You can see his hands, it's just clear water, and he drank it. You can drink the water, it's that clean when it comes out. The remaining sludge that you can see on the left, even that's used. So they actually sell it to a cement factory. I don't know what they use it for there, but they're able to use it in a cement factory. So every bit of the process is within a closed loop. And so there's no impact on the natural environment as well. So after we went to the dye plant, we then went to visit some of the weavers that weave the fabric. Now, Selyn are moving to machine loom for a lot of their products because hand loom is just not viable anymore. And also it's really tricky to get people to get new people to become weavers as well. It's an industry that a lot of people don't want to join, so they struggle to find weavers, but also it's obviously really expensive to hand loom all the textiles to make kids toys. And they've done some surveying with their customers as well, and people are products are so price sensitive now that everyone would prefer to have a viable product that sells as opposed to everything made from hand loom. However, they still hand loom all their main textiles. So for example, all the traditional saris that they produce, and for their local market they produce beautiful textiles, and that's all hand loomed. Also all their tableware, so they have the most amazing table runners and placemats, and that's all hand loom as well. So we got to visit one of the loom places, and you can see by this point my kids were really upset with me because I was in my element taking notes and asking a million questions, and they were just so over it, hot and bothered, and wanting a swimming pool that wasn't there. So yeah. So that's Selyn. Fairgo Trading stock their products, so definitely check them out on Fairgo Trading's website, and also I stock them in my little brand as well. So yeah, really beautiful stuff, and they sell amazingly as well. Before I move on, does anyone have any questions about Selyn? No worries, I'll keep going.
Sorry,
okay.
Sorry, Antonia. Yeah. Sorry, Antonia, I'm jumping in there. Only just quickly, because we're going kind of on a family visit over Christmas, and so we won't have a lot of time, but I have a feeling, because we're going up to Sigiriya and to Habarena and all around there. And because we're going with the whole family and it's their first visit there, but it looks like this place is actually on the way. It have to go off the main drag to get to Selyn?
Yeah. So these pictures here where the hand loom place is actually a really nice shop. So they've got a beautiful retail outlet there. All the hand looming happens behind the shop. So you can just walk in as a member of public and visit that place, and they'll take you for a tour around the weaving areas as well. That's not near the factory. I think if you went to the factory, that'd be kind of a bigger situation. But I think that shop is just in. You can actually just Google it. It's on Google Maps, so you can just Google Selyn in Kurunegala, and it'll come up with their shop. And yeah, you can visit there, and you can see all that beautiful product.
I also wanted. I really want to speak to you because this is right up our alley. With our Fairtrade, with our early childhood thing. So if I can get your information, so that I can actually ring you and have a chat to you about all of this.
Yeah, or you could chat to Bob as well, because Bob imports them from them as well.
Terrific. Okay, thanks. That's good.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so moving on to the tea land. So I've skipped the tourist bits now. We went up to do some tourist stuff, but I won't bore you with that. But so the next part, which was probably the most memorable part of the whole trip for me, was visiting the tea lands. Obviously the climate there is so memorable anyway. It's completely misty. So we arrived in a place called Haputale, and that's about half an hour away from Ella. And Ella's a really touristy place, but Haputale is less touristy. And we took the train, which was really fun. And when you get out of the train station, it's completely misty. The whole place is just full of mist the whole time. It's amazing. So yeah, it's really got that kind of that mysterious feel to it. We stayed in the most amazing hotel. If anyone goes to Haputale, please let me know because I've got the best link there of this amazing hotel. Such lovely brothers that run it. And they have a cooking school as well. So we did an amazing Sri Lankan cooking class while we were there. But so we only had 24 hours there, but we saw so much in that 24 hours. And we took a tuk-tuk through the tea lands, and we went to visit a non-Fairtrade Lipton tea factory, which I'll show you in a minute. But on the way, I spotted this Fairtrade symbol, and I was like, "Stop the tuk-tuk! Stop the tuk-tuk!" That's me standing there with the sign. But unfortunately, I didn't visit that producer. And really sadly, I found out afterwards that BioFoods, actually their production is in Haputale, but unfortunately, I contacted them too late. This is a lesson learned to organize everything before you travel. And so I missed visiting. They have all their spice factories and everything there. So unfortunately, that'll be a future visit. But we were able to visit a tea factory as well. So just to kind of a bit of info on Sri Lankan tea. So Ceylon is the colonial name. However, when they gained independence, they decided to keep the name Ceylon tea because of the brand recognition. So that's why it's still called Ceylon tea to this day. The industry is massive. It's worth about 1.3 billion US dollars, and they're the second largest exporter of tea globally after China. So it's really huge. And the industry was started in 1867 by a Scottish guy called James Taylor. And as I said, it's located in the central highlands of Sri Lanka. Obviously, there's a long colonial history of the tea, which I'm not going to go into tonight. But just to let you know that in 1992, the plantations they were in the 70s. I think they were temporarily nationalized, and it was a bit of a disaster from what I've read. And they were privatized in 1992. But very much most of the tea estates still operate in a similar way, like there's still really big estates where the workers live on site. This is actually my husband's picture. So it's a beautiful picture. He's got a nice big lens. And this lady allowed us to take her photo, and we gave her some money as well. So just in terms of life on the plantation, so the vast majority of the workers are Tamil. There's around 600,000 people that work in the tea industry. And since the economic issues over the last few years and inflation, many of the workers have been plunged into poverty, even though their wages were already extremely low, but the real value wage has really gone down. So just recently, in the last few months, I believe, the government has introduced a wage hike from 1,000 Sri Lankan rupees per day to 1,700. So it's still only $8.40 per day, but it was, almost just over half that before. And there has been a lot of pushback from the tea industry on this. So again, I'm not an expert on this, but there's some interesting stuff in the media that's been reported on this because it's obviously a massive issue. This is the types of accommodation that the tea workers live in. So you can see it's really poor condition. In fact, I found a Guardian article when I was there from 2023, which really looks at the really terrible conditions that are faced by tea workers in Sri Lanka. So as I said, we did go to visit a tea factory. So this produces tea for Lipton. And it was pretty much, yeah, it was really similar to the way it's been for decades. It was an amazing tour, actually. They said you weren't allowed photos, but then they let us take photos the whole time. So I do have some inside pictures, which is great. So has anyone ever heard of the saying that tea bags are sweepings from the factory floor? Does anyone ever say that, especially Lipton tea? Well, it's literal. So you can see the tea leaves, oh, well, the processed tea is actually on the factory floor, which we were just astounded by. That yeah, so it's kind of all kind of organized into these squares on the factory floor, and they work through the process to get the different grades. I haven't got the whole process in this show, but I do have all the pictures. But you can see on the top floor the fresh leaves come in, so it's just the kind of bright green leaves that are picked, and then it comes in for processing, and then there's the fermenting process and drying process, and so it kind of yeah, I can't remember all the details in terms of how long it takes, but it's quite a quick process. So it goes from the fresh leaves right to the packaged tea bags, huge bags of teas you can see behind us. And you can see just in small there, that's the Rainforest Alliance logo on there. So this tea was Rainforest Alliance certified, but not Fairtrade certified.
Nice shoes.
Yeah, thanks. So just so we didn't damage the tea leaves on the floor. Okay, so any questions on that? Again, I'm not an expert on tea, but it was pretty fascinating. Okay, so as I said, so I actually contacted Andy Good. I'm ashamed Andy's not on the call tonight, Corinne, but yeah, he's from the Fairtrade Association as well. And I said, have you got any contacts in Sri Lanka? Because I really want to visit some, fair trade food. And so he put me on to Sarath, who's the guy second from the right next to me. And he is the founder of BioFoods, and he is a real pioneer of fair trade. In fact, he's worked all over the world as an advisor for the fair trade system. He's worked in Papua New Guinea, he's worked in many African countries. He was on the board for Fairtrade one word, for many years, and he actually developed this tea standard as well, or supported the development of the tea standard, the Fairtrade tea standard. He was an absolute wealth of knowledge, and I was so lucky that he actually came to meet me, because he's retired now, but he's still on the board of BioFoods, and he'd just come back from the UK. He'd been living in the UK for a year or two, so he just flown back 2 days before, so he came down to meet me, which was really amazing. So this was in Colombo now, and as I said, unfortunately I missed the tea tour, but next time. So just a quick overview of BioFoods. So they were founded in 1997. And they also founded an organization called the Marginalized Organic Producers Association, or MOPA, as they call it. So this is an association of farming families and fair trade farmers. So it's their organization, and there's hundreds of members of that organization, and they also manage the fair trade premium, which I'll talk about in a minute. In fact, BioFoods were the first company in the world, I believe, to have fair trade certified spices, which is quite amazing. And they have a massive industry of coconut and, as I said, tea. So, and they specifically work with smallholder farmers, so they don't work with plantations. So this ensures that farmers have a lot more agency over their businesses. So, and also on the left is Anil. So Anil's the general manager of BioFoods, and he literally spent the whole day showing us around, which was amazing. Quite a lot driving that day. So when we arrived, we went to visit a coconut plantation, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, actually. But BioFoods actually represent 10,050 farming families, which is huge. I think they turn over about 5 million US a year or something. That could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. They also supply organic fertilizers, so they've actually developed their own organic fertilizers, which they supply to farmers. And they support small scale farmers to transition to organic, which can take up to 2 years. And in fact, they've actually developed a local market for products so the farmers can actually sell their products while they're still in transition. So while they may not pass the tests for organic during that transition period, they still support them with a market for their products during that time, which is amazing. When I spoke to the farmers through an interpreter, they told me how, often they're reluctant to move to organic because, they're not sure if it's going to work, or if, the crops are going to, yield less, or the expenses involved. But actually what BioFoods does is really obviously provides them with access to a massive market for their products, which is mainly in Europe. And Anil told me that they spend around 50,000 US per month just on managing the testing of products for the European market. So the amount of testing that goes involved in every single consignment that goes out to ensure that it's organic. And if there's any kind of contamination in Europe, it can get declined. So, I mean, the complexity of that business is just phenomenal. Not only that, they maintain 12 international certifications, of which each certification has like subgroups for each country. So they're kind of juggling all these certifications as well as all the licensing fees for those as well. So it's a hugely complex business. And also when I was there, there was issues with getting containers to Europe because of the Suez Canal issues was closed, and there's just all these massive issues. Not to mention the economic issues that they're facing as a country. So as I said, we went to the coconut farm and we were welcomed with this amazing coconut ceremony. So I was given a ribbon around my neck made of coconut leaves, and then me and Emil had to drink down the hatch in a whole coconut. So everyone watched. So that was the first thing we had to do, is down this delicious coconut. And then there was presentations and speeches, and actually the farmer's wife, after we'd been to visit the plantation, she invited us in for lunch, and she'd cooked this amazing spread all on banana leaves. It was just the most delicious spicy fish curry, and yeah, it was amazing. And she'd even bought sugary things for the kids because she knew they wouldn't like the curry. So yeah, it was really, really wonderful to be welcomed into their home and fed as well. So we also were invited to plant a tree so that we could, have a tree there. So actually, the tree lives for over 90 years. So this is a picture of us planting the tree using BioFoods special fertilizer. So the trees have around a 45-day cycle, and they yield about 600 to 4,500 nuts per 2 months for this farmer in particular. And he's got about 60 trees per acre. And they were telling me that you can make 40 to 50 different products out of coconut. So obviously that's food products, but then there's all the other products, for example, that import ants make. So, things like brushes and all those types of things as well. So there's lots of different things that can be made out of coconut. So it's a big business. Actually, I'm just going to skip to this one. We're on coconuts and go back to that one. So the coconut factory, after that visit, we went to visit the coconut factory. So this is where they process all the coconuts and they manufacture it into coconut milk. Sri Lanka is the 4th largest producer of coconuts globally. I think the Philippines and Thailand are up there. I'm not sure who the 4th one is. And again, mainly destined for the European market. So obviously Fairtrade is much, much bigger in Europe. So having Fairtrade certified organic coconut milk is a real selling point there. So they process around 60,000 coconuts a day in this factory. Oh, I've lost a picture here. Sorry, I had a picture of inside the factory, but I don't know what happened. But basically, inside the factory, it's very much like a commercial factory once we got inside. So we had to fully sanitize everything. wear full outfits and hairnets and shoes. So it's all completely sterile in there. And in the factory, the coconuts, once they come in, it's then quite a mechanized production from there to produce the raw coconut husk, the flesh into the coconut milk, and they actually can it there and they label it. So if you're a retailer back in Europe or here, you just send them the artwork for your label and everything's labeled and it's completely shipped straight from there, and off it goes. And I did have a stat on how many cans they do a day, but I couldn't find it in my notes. Just to go back then to sustainable impact. So many of you know about the Fairtrade premium, but under the Fairtrade system, farmers are paid a premium, which is on top of what they're paid for their product. And that amount of money can be used by the community in whatever way they deem fit for that community. So for BioFoods, it was MOPA that managed the Fairtrade premium. And in 2023, they received $161,000 in Fairtrade premium, which is pretty significant. Some of the projects they do with it include drinking water filtration projects and eye surgery and school for children with disabilities, donations for tea estate families. And obviously they have a massive ecological impact in terms of supporting farmers to transition to organic and biodynamic. So I'll just put a last slide in there just to say that these are my husband's pictures, just to say that Sri Lanka is the most beautiful country probably I've ever been to. It really feels like a paradise. The flora and fauna are just amazing. Peacocks, you hear this noise, and for a while there, it took us a while to work out what bird was making that noise. We'd obviously seen the peacocks everywhere, but then we found that it was the peacocks, and you find them everywhere. And often they'll, spread out their wings and do the full show, and it's just an amazing scene. We saw lots of crocodiles. This is a baby crocodile. It was about this big that we saw on a log, so it's taken through my husband's big lens. And the bottom two pictures were when we went on a safari, saw lots of elephants and eagles and all kinds of animals. So if anyone hasn't been to Sri Lanka, I highly recommend it. The people, I've traveled all over Asia, and the people are probably the kindest and most friendly people. We never felt like a walking wallet. We really felt like we were just so welcomed everywhere we went. So it was an incredible experience. My kids loved it, and we'd love to go back again. And that's it. So this is my brand, Fair Space. I've got a small Fairtrade brand, and please do follow me, and I'd love to fill some questions. And I think, Shirley, sorry, I didn't get your husband's name, but I know you're from Sri Lanka as well. So perhaps you would love to tell us a bit about Sri Lanka, stuff that I haven't covered as well. So Corinne, maybe we could open it up to questions.
Yeah, sure. So if people want to unmute themselves, if they